So today I'm arranging a sympathy bouquet for a new customer that is out of town and wanted to send someone here in Philly their condolences. So she wanted a vase, a clear vase arrangement with some whites and some purples just to express her sympathy towards this friend, close friend. So I'm starting with a 10-inch, a little bit over 10-inch vase, and for arranging in glass to kind of keep it clean and uniform. If you can see the vase here, it's pretty tall, so the stems are going to be exposed. I utilize water floral tape to create a grid at the very top of the lip, and I'll tilt it a little bit so you can see that. And this just keeps the stems organized as I start placing them where I want them to be. It's a little bit of trial and error because sometimes you might get everything placed and then make adjustments. So that's kind of the process. But I always start with the largest flowers that I do have, or the tallest. So today I have some lilies that I'm going to be using since she specifically requested those. So that's these flowers. And I always look for bunches that have some that are blooming and some that will open later, because they will open. And I want to make sure that this lasts for the customer for a while since she is going through a difficult time. I want to make sure that she is getting what she invested her money in to comfort her good friend. So I always cut the stems on an angle, and that helps the water to really travel through the stem and keep the flower hydrated. So it's a little bit, again, of trial and error. So as you can see, this is slightly too tall for this vase. So I'm going to cut it down a little more, and again, always cutting on an angle. Okay, and that will be the highest point of this arrangement. So you can see there are a few flowers here that will bloom from this one stem. Okay, then I'm going to add in the others that I have, always starting with the biggest. And you might find that changing the middle one is better to keep the height and symmetry. So this one is has a taller bud that's going to come. So I'm going to actually place that in the middle and move the other one over. Okay. And I have 3 stems of these lilies. So it's actually perfect when arranging in a glass vase, because you really want to, it doesn't need to be perfect. That's kind of the beauty with flowers. They're naturally beautiful. But you want to have some type of organization when you are building out an arrangement so that once it's complete, it looks presentable as well as uniform. So that's what we're creating here. So you can see already we kind of have a triangle effect from the placement of the 3 largest stems that I do have. So next, since we started with the white, there are purple inside the stems, and I'll be sure to show you that once I'm complete with the arrangement. I'm going to go to another color just to make sure I'm getting balance with color and weight of the flowers that I'm using. So these are Peruvian lilies that I'm going to use today. These are also known as alsamaria, and I can never say that name, so I go with Peruvian lily because that's how I grew up calling them, and that's what they're also known as. So there are a few stragglers in terms of leaves on this, which the greenery is beautiful, so I try my best to work with it, these leaves at the top here, to keep some other neutral colors in the arrangement and to make sure that it looks full and complete. So this one is a little bit shorter than the lilies that I worked with, so I'm going to go just a little bit on that diagonal cut, which brings it almost in line with the lower flowers. So I'm going to go down just a little bit more to make sure that they're closer in length. Okay, so we have some color added, and again, I will pick up the arrangement and the camera and make sure that you can see the finished product once we're done. But for now, we're just getting the initial placement to make sure that we have balance in terms of color and weight of the flowers that are being used. And a little tidbit too, if you do ever receive flowers from someone through myself or another delivery service, you want to make sure that there are no leaves or debris in the water inside the vase, because that's going to kill the flowers faster. Once they come out of the ground, they're already starting their process of decaying, and the less bacteria that gets into the stem from clean water and a clean vase, which is very important, the better in terms of how long they'll last. So this one, again, we're going to cut and match to the lilies in terms of height. And again, it's visual, but it's also practice and expertise from what you may have done in the past. So you kind of get a sense of how tall you want certain flowers to be. So I'm going to do maybe 2 more of these, maybe just 1 to keep the 3s going. But again, trial and error. And at the end, once you have the finished product, you can make any necessary adjustments again at that point. That way it's a constantly working arrangement, and the finished product will be exactly what you want once you can take a step back and see how it looks from afar, how it looks up close, and make sure that you're happy with it. So this season is usually quieter for most florists. Of course, we're gearing up for Valentine's Day, which is one of the biggest flower holidays. The hard thing, though, is there are people that have needs for flowers, such as this client, unrelated, obviously, to the happy, joyous Cupid holiday. This is actually the 3rd sympathy bouquet I've created in about 25 days. So it's a little bittersweet, but I love being there for my customers and giving them what they want, or helping them figure out what they want, because sometimes they have no clue. They just know they want to send something thoughtful. And that's where I step in, because not everybody knows the name of flowers or the colors that represent sympathy or whatever the case may be. So as you can see, we're filling out the bouquet, right? So we have purple, we have white, and these flowers are really good for filling. They help an arrangement look a little more complete when there might be dead space. So you just kind of play around with it and see what works best for the occasion. Now this client very specifically requested white lilies and an off-white rose, so I do have some roses to add for her as well. But she was open to suggestions, which is every floral designer's dream, because we want to make sure that our work is represented appropriately, as well as the message that's being sent is received appropriately. So I have some other filler here in purple that I'm going to use. It's a little bit on the drier side. So these are going to last a bit longer, but they are almost like paper and they're purple. So I might use these sparingly just because they might change the look and feel of the bouquet. Since again, they are drier than the other flowers that we're using. We also don't want them to take too much of the water away from the other flower material. And you can always strip the stem down to the freshest part of it. So if there's any outside layer that you believe is gone or wasteful at this point, you can go ahead and remove it. Now these I might actually keep until the end, since I do still have my white roses to work with, and I do still have some of the Peruvian lilies. I also have a filler that is known for comfort and soothing qualities, which is silver dollar eucalyptus. So I'll be using that shortly as well. But for now, I'm going to add in some more white and some more of the Peruvian lilies. And as you can see, there's a lot of green in this. So more than likely, once I get closer to the end, I'm going to remove some of these bigger leaves on the lilies just to keep it cleaner and make sure it's not taking away from the beauty of the actual flower bud. All right, so let's move over to roses. Now, roses are very delicate, I'm sure many of you know. So they tend to come like this or completely closed. And personally, I prefer to work with the closed buds because those are going to take maybe a day or even half a day to really start opening up. And they'll maintain their beautiful quality both as a closed bud as well as once it opens. Once they open, however, they don't last very long. So you want to make sure that when you do use them, you're getting some good life out of them. So otherwise, if you, let's say for example, you send a bouquet of a dozen roses, those dozen roses may not last many days. So the flower care that goes into them, once they're used in an arrangement, you know, going through the design process is really important. So making sure again that you do cut on that angle is really important, as well as conditioning the water so that the stems remain in good condition, and also just making sure that they're good roses. So you might get some that are already dying or wilting, I should say. I hate using that word dying, especially when I'm doing a sympathy arrangement. But they might be already wilting, and those you probably won't get much out of at all. So I'm just going to keep turning the vase, making sure again that there's symmetry with the placement of each individual stem. And this is just the preliminary stages of the arrangement. So again, I'll keep moving through and changing as needed. And depending on number of orders that I have on a given day, this process can take 30 minutes. It can take an hour if it's a larger arrangement. It really just depends on the flow of the shop and the time of the delivery that's expected and things like that. So this client wasn't actually sure when her friend would be available for me to deliver them, and I prefer to see the recipient and make sure that they receive it versus leaving it, unless it's a boxed order that's being shipped. But if I'm doing the personal delivery, it's much better if I know that they got it, because unfortunately people these days do steal things like flower arrangements and any gifts that they can see. So these roses are a little bit challenging because, again, she specifically wanted a color like this, and some of them are already wilted. So my dozen roses that I started with is quickly going down unexpectedly, but also as a florist you prepare for that. So that's why that's not the main flower in this arrangement. I'm going to go back to the Peruvian lilies because I do have some more of those, and again they're really beautiful and really fill out the arrangement. So that's what these are. And another reason why I really like doing this is because it's therapeutic. So it's work, and I get paid for my work, but I also get something out of it for me as well. And this one I want to keep a little bit longer to come in just a little higher than the others, again, to fill in any dead space that may be starting to form. And sometimes you might have to hold on to other stems because you don't want to move the placement if it's where you think you want it. But again, this is all preliminary, and at the very end, I will go through and review my work and make the adjustments that I believe are necessary. Sorry, we have a little tangled stem issue here, so I'm just adjusting that so you can still see the work. These are very delicate flowers, so I very rarely mess with the actual buds. And as you can see, there are some that are still closed. Here, that's going to open. That's going to open as well. And I get rid of a lot of the greenery because it is such a beautiful flower, but as you can see, the buds are so small and delicate, they can be hidden, especially in an arrangement that already has other greenery elements. So as much as I can without changing the actual flower, I get rid of the greenery and the excess leaves at the top. So I'm already starting to see that more than likely my next move or final move before I present this arrangement will be to get rid of some of the leaves on the lilies because they are taking up some space. But again, I'm sitting right next to this arrangement, so when I get up and walk away, it may look perfect and it might be exactly what I was going for. It may not. So again, constantly making adjustments as needed before the finished product is presented. Now, I do think we have good symmetry here. I think that I would like some more roses. And so I'm going to move to those. And I want to give the roses a little more height because you can see the current ones are lower, which is beautiful because it's giving the greenery some color. But I want to get a little taller with them. So that means I need to snip the ends just a little less. And then I want to place these towards the center layer versus the outer perimeter. So I'm going to work that into the arrangement and make sure it gets placed where I'm expecting it to go. And the other thing about arranging in glass, you don't have to use the floral tape to create a grid. You can actually just create the bouquet in your hands and bound it with a rubber band or with green floral tape so it's less obvious, and then place that arrangement directly into the vase. That's another way to do arrangements in glass, is to give yourself that option to create where you want everything placed by hand without the support of the floral tape. But that's actually a little more of a process because you really want to make sure with the flowers that you're working with that you don't damage anything. And there's room for bent stems with the flowers that we're working with that are super delicate. I could have lost a lot of the lilies if I tried to place them through my hand, which is pretty small. I have small hands. So it's been a curse for most of my life where some of the things I love to do require a larger hand, and I don't have big hands. So it makes it slightly challenging to accomplish some of my goals. But I digress. So we have some whites, right? We have greenery. This is going to open white, this one. We have greenery and we have some purple. Now, sitting next to this, it looks tall to me, but I do have a tall vase, which I will take a full length shot of once I'm done. And I don't want it to be too short because then the weight of the actual flowers will be off balance. So the more height you give a tall arrangement, the better for making it look balanced with the container that it's in or the vase that it's in. So that's what we're doing here. Now I have 3 more stems of Peruvian lilies, so I'm going to go ahead and fit those in because we're almost done, believe it or not. And I want to add these in between the white that's happening at the very top of the arrangement. So right now the center is pretty white or light colored, and the sides, even though I put some of these lilies on a higher height, at a taller height, they're still a bit more white than purple. And that's okay. It really depends on what you're going for with the arrangement. This client wanted a lighter color arrangement, so I don't want to go too crazy and put too many colors, which is why I'm only using 2 colors in this arrangement. The silver dollar eucalyptus falls in line with the greenery and will definitely give it a nice softening effect. And again, the qualities of eucalyptus are known to be comforting and soothing, so it's kind of fitting for this type of occasion, which really isn't an occasion, but you understand. So, as I said, we're almost done. I'm just going to continue to work with what I started with here. And again, you have to be very careful with these lilies because they bend very easily. And the last one I have here, again, will be placed a little bit higher than the others. I'm going to remove the greenery. I use my shears as much as possible, but sometimes with removing leaves on the stem, it's faster to just pull them off, and there's nothing wrong with that. So the perfectionist in me hates doing that, but in the essence of time, because this is a really long video, I just figure I'll start pulling the leaves since I get the process. And as you can see, there are a lot of stems in this vase. So we're starting to get to the point of having to force a little bit, but you really want to just keep looking for an opening because it's there and you just have to gently push through. Okay, so we have white and purple, and there's a little bit of crowding here with roses. If you can see, there's 3 in a row, so a slight adjustment will work for that. And here, this one can go. This one might actually be able to move. And not very far. It's still in the same square of the grid. It's just the positioning that really makes a difference on where it falls. So just like that, I created some space between the 3 that were clustered here. Okay. And again, you'll keep turning it, and there's still there's a rose here that's not quite going the way that I want it to. So sometimes turning it might give you what you're looking for. Right? And I do still have 3 roses. So at this stage, I want to take a break from the actual floral color elements that I'm using, and I want to add in my eucalyptus, because now we're getting to the end where I'm going to finish adding what I want to use, and then I'm going to go ahead and take a step back and see what's missing or what needs to be moved or adjusted. So eucalyptus is great for accenting a piece, for filling it out. As you can see, there's some dead space, right, with the greenery. So this will just kind of complete the look. And it's also a nice way to hide the mechanics of the arrangement, which are the floral grid. And this one, I don't know if I love how low it's hanging, but I'm going to leave it until I get to the last bunch of eucalyptus. And this last bunch actually has an interesting makeup. So I'm cutting it down to get more use out of it. And it may work out perfectly that there's a low branch, just based on the shape of what I have left to work with. But again, if needed, I can always change it completely and cut it down to smaller branches. So this will be delivered by me, so I will be wrapping it just for protective purposes. And I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So as you can see, it's usually ideal if you work with an odd number of buds or floral material. So you can see that one's still a little bit lower than the others, so I might actually turn it so that the one that's falling low is on the inside and blends in with the rest of the flowers. And there may be a space where I feel like I need something there, but my personal appreciation for flowers is that there's beauty in the imperfection of them, and sometimes symmetry is too perfect, and life isn't perfect. So why gift something that's perfect when it'll make you think about perfection, and that's not real. So you make it as perfect as you believe it can be, and that's good enough, because once you get caught up in anything other than that, it becomes overwhelming. And you can end up hating your arrangements and starting all over. And then you waste money and time, when the reality is the person who's receiving them will be grateful and appreciative that there was just a thought at all about them during a time. Whether it's a difficult time or a happy time, the thought alone is what really makes the difference. So now I'm just going in and using the extra flowers that I have because I don't like to waste them. And I'm filling in. I may throw these purple in there, but I still haven't decided. I don't think they're necessary because we are getting pretty full in the vase. But I will do my best to use everything that I have. And again, I'm still looking at these green leaves in the middle and feeling as though they may be too much. So there's a little bit of extra on this side. I don't know if you can see how that's falling lower. So I'm going to go ahead right now and cut those off because they're not necessary. And I believe this was the second one that I saw that I did not like. Just like that. Okay, now I love the eucalyptus like this, but I could see that it's invasive and also widening the top, right? So this is one of those moments where I'm going to take them out and I'm going to start over just with the eucalyptus because they're beautiful, but we don't want them to take over an already beautiful arrangement. So this one is probably the cleanest. So I'm going to go through the middle instead and have it fall to the side a little less obviously. And now that I have all these beautiful, delicate flowers in here, I have to be careful and not damage them because, again, they're very fragile. They're beautiful, thoughtful gifts, but they are fragile. So again, you'll see the finished product once I stand up and move the arrangement to the edge of my work table and get a full-length shot, and then make my final adjustments if any are needed. So again, just placing it still on the side, but inside the actual floral elements. And sometimes what I'll do at the end too, depending on how sturdy the arrangement becomes as we're going through this process, I'll go ahead and remove the floral wire if it's still showing and I just don't like how it looks. I'll do that. It's helpful in preserving the elegance of the arrangement. And also sometimes it can get sloppy, but it's a good guide for when you're first starting on the arrangement. So make sure you're paying attention to those key basic key practices of floral arranging. All right, so this was a big one, but I'm looking at the flowers next to it and I think that it fits there perfectly. All right, so I'm just going to keep turning it. There's a couple of greens that I'm just not loving the placement of. For example, this big guy here, to me, didn't work. And this one that's kind of folding through all the way across the vase is also an imperfection in my mind. And I do have one more branch of eucalyptus. So what I'm going to do first is start looking at my floral tape, making sure it doesn't look gross, for lack of a better term. And I'm going to cut down this last branch of eucalyptus. because there is just one spot that I just noticed that's missing them. So it's all about balance. It's all about logical thinking, I guess. I don't always think through arrangements out loud, so this is interesting for me to get my first video going, to detail the process, but it's kind of fun. I feel like I have an audience, so thank you for watching and listening if you are. It's motivating me and inspiring me to always be perfecting my craft. And this little branch, I might just keep for my personal collection of eucalyptus. And I do have roses left, but this is a good time to take a step back and really decide, do I want to add anything or take anything out? I'm also going to redo the floral tape and make sure that it's still clean, and if it's not, then I'll be removing it. Because it's not really needed once you get the arrangement to where you want it. But you do want to make sure that it doesn't shift and transport and things like that. So maybe even just losing some of the floral tape is good too, which is what I'm doing right now because this one got loose on its own. And this one's loose, but it's kind of the main artery on the tape. So I may take this one. See what's working on this side. This one isn't. And honestly, as I'm removing these, there may only be one piece that needs to stay, which is totally fine. I don't want to mess with it too much because as soon as I do that, everything will start to shift. And the beautiful arrangement that I just worked on will change in the blink of an eye. Okay. And it's perfectly normal to see some of the florist's work in terms of how they maintain the integrity of an arrangement. But I don't love that. That's the perfectionist in me that won't be quiet. But again, sometimes the tape is great for a guide, and then it's unnecessary once you get the right amount of stems in there to really hold things in place where you want them. So I've officially removed all of the tape. And it's just clear tape. It's like floral tape, so it's waterproof. Or so they say, but it just helps to create that basis for how you're going to make the arrangement. Okay, so I think we're looking good, but again, you always want to take a step back and make sure that it is what you want before you present it to a customer. And sometimes even just a simple turn of a stem changes everything. Or placing it deeper into the water changes a lot. So I still have my extra roses if I need it. Personally, I don't think I will because this looks beautiful. But I am going to take a step back with the camera